The wind howled like a wounded animal through the mountain pass, and Mallory Grayson knew this would be the night her father finally made good on his threats. She pressed her face against the frosted window of their cramped cabin outside South Pass City, Wyoming, watching the snow fall in thick, relentless sheets as December 1878 carved its bitter cold into the landscape. Behind her, she could hear her father's drunken voice negotiating with someone, the clink of coins, the low rumble of male laughter that made her stomach twist with dread. She was 22 years old, and tonight she would learn that a human life could be measured in gold pieces and desperation. "Mallory, get in here." Her father's voice cut through her thoughts like a rusty blade. She turned slowly, her worn dress hanging loosely on her thin frame, the result of too many meals skipped so her younger siblings could eat. The man standing next to her father was unfamiliar, dressed in furs and leather, his face weathered and cruel. His eyes assessed her like livestock, and she fought the urge to run. "This is Marcus Thorne," her father said, his words slurred. "He's willing to pay good money for a wife." "You're going with him." The words hung in the air like ice crystals, sharp and cutting. Mallory opened her mouth to protest, but her father's raised hand silenced her. "We need the money. Your mother's medicine, the young ones need food, you'll do this." Marcus stepped forward and Mallory could smell whiskey and tobacco on him. "Let's see what I'm buying," he said, reaching for her chin. She jerked away and his expression darkened. "Got some spirit in you, that's fine. I'll break that soon enough." The cabin door burst open with such force that snow swirled inside like angry ghosts. A tall figure filled the doorway, broad-shouldered and imposing, his face obscured by the brim of his hat and the darkness of the storm behind him. He stepped inside, and Mallory could see he was a cowboy, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. Ice clung to his coat, and his breath came out in white clouds. "Heard you're selling," the stranger said, his voice deep and measured. "I'm interested in making an offer." Her father's eyes lit up with greed. "Well now, seems we got ourselves a bidding war. Marcus here's offered $50. The cowboy's jaw tightened, and he looked at Mallory for the first time. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something she could not name but felt deep in her chest. He turned back to her father. "I'll pay double, $100. The room fell silent except for the crackling fire and the wind outside. Marcus sputtered, his face turning red. "Now hold on, we had a deal. Did you shake on it?" the cowboy asked, his tone flat. "Did you sign anything?" "Well, no, but then there's no deal." The cowboy pulled out a leather pouch and counted out gold coins onto the rough wooden table, the metallic sound ringing through the cabin like church bells. Mallory's father stared at the money, his hands trembling. "Done," her father said quickly, snatching up the coins before anyone could change their minds. Marcus lunged forward, but the cowboy's hand moved to his hip, where a revolver hung ready. "I'd think real careful about your next move," he said quietly. Marcus glared at all of them but back toward the door. "You're going to regret this," Marcus spat before disappearing into the storm. The cowboy turned to Mallory, and in the firelight she could see his features more clearly. He had a strong jaw, a straight nose that looked like it had been broken at least once, and those remarkable gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. "My name is Warren Calloway," he said, "and I need you to understand something important." She waited, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in the room must hear it. "I paid your father that money, yes, but now I'm giving you a choice." He stepped closer, and she noticed he smelled like leather and pine and winter air. "You can come with me to my ranch about 5 miles from here. I've got a good house, warm and safe. You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't touch you, won't force you to do anything you don't want to do. Or you can walk out that door right now, and I'll give you half that money to start fresh somewhere else." Mallory stared at him, confusion and disbelief warring inside her. "I don't understand. Why would you do that?" "Because no person should be bought or sold like cattle," Warren said firmly. "What your father did is wrong. What that other man intended to do is worse. So now I'm giving you what you should have had all along, the right to choose." Her father started to protest, but Warren silenced him with a look that could have frozen the sun. "You got your money. You don't get a say in what happens next." Mallory looked around the cabin, at the father who had just sold her, at her mother who sat silent in the corner, too beaten down by life to intervene, at the shapes of her sleeping siblings huddled together for warmth. She thought about Marcus Thorne's cruel eyes and rough hands. Then she looked at Warren Calloway, this stranger who had just offered her something she had never had before, freedom. "I'll come with you," she said quietly, "but I want to be clear. I'm choosing to come because I want to, not because you paid for me." Warren's face softened, and for the first time she saw him almost smile. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Get whatever belongings you have. We should leave before the storm gets worse." She gathered her few possessions: a change of clothes, her mother's old Bible, a photograph of her family from better days. Her mother hugged her briefly, whispering, "Be safe," but her father would not even look at her. As she walked to the door, she realized she felt no sadness, only a strange sense of relief. Warren helped her onto his horse, a sturdy roan mare that seemed unbothered by the weather. He swung up behind her, and she felt the solid warmth of him at her back. "Hold on," he said, and they rode out into the blizzard. The journey was brutal. Snow stung her face and the wind tried to tear her from the saddle, but Warren's arm around her waist kept her secure. She could feel his heartbeat against her back, steady and strong. After what felt like hours but was probably only 40 minutes, they arrived at a ranch house that loomed out of the white darkness like a ship in a storm. Warren dismounted and helped her down, then quickly led his horse to the barn. "Get inside," he called over the wind. "Doors unlocked." Mallory stumbled up the porch steps and pushed open the door, falling into warmth and light. The house was larger than she expected, with solid furniture and a fire burning in a stone fireplace. She stood dripping melted snow onto a rug, taking in her surroundings with wide eyes. Warren came in a few minutes later, stomping snow from his boots. He hung his coat and hat on pegs by the door, then turned to her. "You look half frozen. Let me show you to your room and I'll heat water for a bath." He led her down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than the entire cabin she had shared with her family. It had a real bed with a quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a window with actual curtains. "This is yours," Warren said. "There's a lock on the inside of the door. Use it if it makes you feel safer. My room is at the other end of the hall." "Why are you doing this?" Mallory asked, turning to face him. "Really, men don't just hand over $100 and expect nothing in return." Warren was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago, my sister was in a situation like yours. Different circumstances, but the same result. A man thought he owned her because he had paid money to our father, who was no better than yours. She tried to run, and he killed her for it." His voice was flat, but she could hear the pain underneath. "Her name was Sarah. She was 19. I swore that if I ever had the chance to stop something like that from happening again, I would." Mallory felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm sorry about your sister. So am I." Warren moved toward the door. "I'll get that water heating. There are extra clothes in the dresser, might be big on you, but they're clean and warm. Come out to the main room when you're ready and I'll make us something to eat." After he left, Mallory sat on the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. This day had started with her expecting to be handed over to a cruel stranger, and now she was in a warm house with a man who seemed to want nothing from her except for her to be safe. It felt like a dream, and she was afraid to trust it. The bath helped. Warren had filled a large tin tub and left her to soak in blissful hot water, washing away the grime and fear of the evening. She dressed in the clothes from the dresser, a flannel shirt and trousers that were indeed too large but wonderfully comfortable. When she emerged, her hair still damp, she found Warren in the kitchen area, cooking something that smelled incredible. "Venison stew," he said, ladling it into bowls. "Nothing fancy, but it'll warm you up." They ate in silence at first, the only sounds the crackling fire and the storm raging outside. Mallory could not remember the last time she had eaten so well. Warren watched her with those gray eyes, and she felt self-conscious. "Tell me about your ranch," she said finally, needing to break the silence. Warren set down his spoon. "I've got about 300 acres here. Raise cattle mostly, some horses. It's good land, though winters are hard. I've got 2 ranch hands who help during the busy seasons, but they've gone south for the winter. It's just me here right now, and now you if you choose to stay." "What would I do if I stayed, I mean?" "Whatever you want," Warren said. "If you want to help around the house with the animals, that's fine. If you want to just rest and figure out what comes next, that's fine too. I'm not going to demand anything from you, Mallory. I meant what I said. You're free here." She studied him in the firelight, trying to understand this man who had appeared out of a blizzard and changed her life. "What do you want from life, Warren Calloway?" He seemed surprised by the question. "I want to build something that lasts. This ranch, a family someday maybe. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm doing right by people and animals in my care. I want to honor my sister's memory by being better than the men who failed her." He paused. "What about you? What do you want?" No one had ever asked her that before. Mallory felt tears threaten again. "I want to matter. I want to be more than something to be traded or sold. I want to know what it feels like to make my own choices and live with the consequences, good or bad." "Then that's what you'll have," Warren said softly. "I promise you that." That night, Mallory lay in her bed listening to the storm and thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. She heard Warren moving around the house, checking the fire, making sure everything was secure. There was something comforting about those sounds, about knowing someone was looking out for her without expecting anything in return. She woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment she forgot where she was, then the memories of the previous night came flooding back. She dressed quickly and went to find Warren. He was at the stove, cooking breakfast, and he looked up when she entered. "Morning. Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in years," she admitted. Through the window, she could see the world transformed by snow, everything white and pristine and beautiful. "Storms passed," Warren said, following her gaze. "I need to check on the animals, make sure they all weathered it okay. You're welcome to come with me if you'd like, or stay warm in here." "I'll come," Mallory said. She had spent her whole life working, and idleness felt strange. After breakfast, they bundled up and went out into the cold. The snow came up to Mallory's knees in places, and Warren had to break trail. The barn was warm with animal heat, and she helped him feed the cattle and horses, muck out stalls, check for any injuries or illness. Warren was patient, showing her how he liked things done, never condescending or short-tempered. "You're good with them," he observed as she stroked the nose of a spotted mare. "Animals can tell when someone has a gentle hand." "I always loved animals," Mallory said. "We had a few chickens and a goat when I was younger before things got bad. I used to dream about having a whole farm full of creatures to care for." "Well, "You've got about 30 head of cattle and 8 horses here," Warren said with a slight smile. "Dream big enough for you," she laughed, and it felt good. When was the last time she had laughed? They worked together through the morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Warren was strong but moved with economy, never wasting energy. She found herself watching him when she thought he would not notice, admiring the way he handled even the most stubborn animals with calm authority. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. Warren was true to his word, never pushing, never demanding. He gave her space but was always available if she needed anything. They ate meals together and talked, really talked about everything and nothing. Mallory learned that he was 28, had built this ranch from almost nothing over the past 5 years, loved to read though books were hard to come by, and had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. She told him about her life before, about her mother who had once been strong but was broken by poverty and a cruel husband, about her siblings she missed, about how she had raised them more than her parents had, sacrificing her own future for theirs. Warren listened with an intensity that made her feel heard, truly heard for the first time in her life. A week after that first night, Mallory was in the kitchen making bread when Warren came in from outside, his face grim. "Marcus Thorne was in town," he said without preamble. "Telling anyone who'll listen that I stole his property. He's talking about coming out here to get what's his." Mallory's blood ran cold. "What do? We make sure he understands you're not property and you're here by choice," Warren said firmly. "But I won't lie to you. Men like him don't give up easy. If he comes here, it might get ugly." "I won't go with him," Mallory said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "I'd rather die than let him take me." Warren's expression softened. "It won't come to that, I promise you." He crossed to the gun cabinet and checked his rifle, then his revolver. The sight of the weapons made Mallory's stomach churn, but she understood the necessity. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Warren said, "I've been thinking. It might help if people in town knew your situation, knew you chose to be here. If we went into South Pass City together, let you tell your story to the sheriff, maybe even the pastor or some of the townswomen. Would you be willing to do that?" Mallory considered it. The thought of going back to town, of possibly seeing her father or Marcus, terrified her. But Warren was right. She needed people to know she was not stolen property. "I'll do it," she said. They rode into South Pass City 2 days later on a clear, cold morning. The town was small but bustling with miners and merchants, saloons and supply stores. Warren helped her down from the horse in front of the sheriff's office, his hand steady on her elbow. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened as Mallory explained what had happened, how her father had tried to sell her, how Warren had paid double and then given her a choice. The sheriff's expression grew darker as she spoke. "That's a serious accusation against your father," the sheriff said carefully. "It's the truth," Mallory said, meeting his eyes. "And I'm willing to swear to it." Warren spoke up. "Marcus Thorne's been spreading lies, saying I stole her. I want it on record that Mallory came with me by her own choice and is free to leave any time she wants." The sheriff looked between them, then nodded slowly. "I'll make a note of it. Marcus has been causing trouble in town too, getting drunk and belligerent. I'll have a word with him, make clear that Miss Grayson has made her choice, and he needs to respect it." They left the sheriff's office and walked through town. People stared, and Mallory heard whispers, but Warren stayed close, protective without being overbearing. They stopped at the general store, and Warren bought supplies and, to Mallory's surprise, a length of beautiful blue fabric. "For you," he said when she protested. "You should have something nice." "Warren, you've already done so much. I want to," he said simply. "Please." She took the fabric, feeling its softness, and felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. They were leaving the store when Marcus Thorne appeared, blocking their path. He was drunk, swaying slightly, his eyes bloodshot and mean. "There's the thief and the whore," he slurred loudly. Warren's jaw clenched, but his voice remained calm. "Step aside, Marcus. We don't want trouble." "You stole what was mine," Marcus snarled, pointing at Mallory. "I paid for her fair and square." "I'm not a thing to be bought," Mallory said, anger overriding her fear. "And I would never go with you willingly. You make my skin crawl." Marcus lunged forward, but Warren was faster. He stepped between them, his hand on Marcus's chest, pushing him back. "Touch her and it'll be the last thing you do," Warren said, his voice low and dangerous. A crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation. Mallory saw the sheriff pushing through. "That's enough," Sheriff Bradley barked. "Marcus, you're drunk. Get yourself home before I lock you up." "This isn't over," Marcus spat, but he stumbled away, disappearing into a saloon. The ride back to the ranch was tense. Warren kept scanning the horizon, alert for any sign of trouble. When they finally arrived home, he made sure all the doors and windows were secure. "I'm sorry," Mallory said as they prepared dinner together. "This is all because of me." "No," Warren said firmly, turning to face her. "This is because Marcus Thorne is a bad man who thinks he can own another person. None of this is your fault, Mallory. Don't ever think that." She blinked back tears. "Why do you care so much? We barely know each other." Warren was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Because you remind me of Sarah. That strength, that fire even when the world's trying to beat it out of you. And because somewhere along the way in these past couple weeks, I've started to care about you as more than just someone I'm trying to help." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Mallory's heart raced. She had been trying not to acknowledge her own growing feelings for Warren, the way her pulse quickened when he smiled, the comfort she felt in his presence, the warmth that spread through her when their hands accidentally touched. "I care about you too," she admitted softly. "But I'm scared. I don't know how to trust you, trust that this isn't too good to be true." Warren crossed to her, stopping just inches away. "I know. And I'm not asking you to trust completely right now. Take your time. All I'm saying is that my feelings for you are real and they're growing every day. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." That night, Mallory lay in bed thinking about Warren's words. She had spent so long just surviving that she had forgotten what it felt like to want something for herself. But she was beginning to want Warren, want a life with him, want to explore these feelings that scared and excited her in equal measure. The next morning, she woke to unusual sounds, men's voices outside. She dressed quickly and hurried to the main room to find Warren standing at the window, rifle in hand. "Stay back," he said tersely. "We've got visitors." Mallory peeked around the curtain and saw 3 men on horses in the yard. One was Marcus Thorne. Her stomach dropped. "What do they want?" "Nothing good." Warren called out, "This is private property. State your business or leave." Marcus's voice carried through the cold air. "I want what's mine, Calloway. Send out the girl and there won't be trouble." "She's not yours and never was," Warren shouted back. "And she's staying right here." One of the other men drew a gun and Mallory gasped. Warren's expression was stone. "Last chance," he called. "Ride away now." The man fired and the bullet shattered a window. Warren returned fire immediately and the man fell from his horse with a scream. The other 2 scattered, taking cover behind the barn and a wagon. Warren moved to a different window, firing again. "Mallory, there's a rifle in the cabinet," he said urgently. "Can you shoot?" "I've never. It's easy. Just point and pull the trigger if anyone tries to come through a door." He handed her the weapon, and she held it with shaking hands. The standoff continued. bullets occasionally striking the house. Warren fired sparingly, trying to keep the men pinned down without wasting ammunition. Mallory watched in terror, praying no one would be killed, that this would end peacefully. Then she heard hoofbeats, many of them. Through the window, she saw riders approaching, at least 6 of them. Her heart sank until she recognized the sheriff's star on the lead rider's chest. Sheriff Bradley had brought a posse. "Drop your weapons," the sheriff commanded. "You're surrounded." Marcus and his companion emerged from hiding, hands raised. The sheriff's men quickly disarmed and bound them. One rider broke away from the group and came to the house. Warren opened the door cautiously. "Heard shots from town," Sheriff Bradley said. "Figured Marcus might try something stupid. Looks like I was right." Warren lowered his rifle. "They fired first. I've got a witness." "I believe you." "We'll take them in and they'll face charges for attempted kidnapping and assault. You folks all right?" "We're fine," Warren said, though his hands were shaking slightly as the adrenaline faded. "Thank you, Sheriff." After the sheriff and his posse left with Marcus and the others, Warren closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling heavily. Mallory set down the rifle and found herself crossing to him, wrapping her arms around him before she could think better of it. Warren stiffened in surprise, then his arms came around her, holding her close. She could feel his heart pounding against her cheek. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe now." "You could have been killed," Mallory said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Because of me." "Not because of you. Because I chose to stand between you and harm. That's what you do for people you care about." He pulled back slightly to look at her face. "Mallory, I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, it's not pity or obligation. I'm falling in love with you. Have been since that first night when you looked at me and said you were choosing to come because you wanted to, not because I'd paid for you." Mallory's breath caught. "Warren, you don't have to say anything back," he continued quickly. "I just needed you to know. After today, after nearly losing the chance to tell you, I couldn't keep it in anymore." She looked up at him, at this man who had saved her, protected her, given her freedom and safety and kindness, who made her laugh and feel valued and seen. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but it's true." Warren's face transformed, hope and joy replacing the tension. "Yeah. And then she was kissing him, or he was kissing her, or they were kissing each other, and it was gentle and sweet and perfect. His lips were warm, and his hand cupped her face so carefully, like she was something precious. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "I want to do this right," Warren said. "Court you properly, let you know I'm serious about you, about us." Mallory smiled, genuinely smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I'd like that." Over the following weeks, Warren courted her with a devotion that made her heart swell. He brought her wildflowers he found on the property, even in winter. He taught her to ride properly, patient when she was nervous, cheering when she succeeded. They cooked together, read aloud to each other in the evenings, talked about their dreams and fears. He kissed her goodnight at her door like a gentleman, never pushing for more, though the heat between them grew with each passing day. By the time spring arrived, melting the snow and coaxing green from the earth, Mallory knew she wanted to spend the rest of her life with Warren Calloway. He had shown her what real love looked like, what partnership and respect and genuine affection felt like. She was no longer the scared, desperate girl who had been bartered in the snow. She was a woman who knew her own mind and heart. Warren proposed on a warm evening in April as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. He did not have a ring yet, he explained sheepishly, but he wanted to ask anyway because he could not wait another day. "Mallory Grayson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because anyone says you should, not because of obligation or debt, but because you choose me just as much as I choose you." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Warren, I choose you. I'll always choose you." They married in late May in the small church in South Pass City, with the sheriff and his wife as witnesses. Mallory wore a dress made from the blue fabric Warren had bought her months ago, sewn by her own hands. She had invited her mother and siblings, though not her father. Her mother came, looking older and more worn but happy for her daughter. Mallory's younger sister, barely 16, whispered, "You look like a princess." Warren wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut, and when he looked at Mallory walking down the aisle, his eyes shone with unshed tears. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Warren kissed her with such tenderness that the small, gathered crowd applauded. The wedding night was everything Mallory had hoped for and more. Warren was patient and gentle, guiding her through nervousness to pleasure, showing her that physical intimacy could be beautiful and loving when shared with the right person. They lay together afterward, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I love you, Mrs. Calloway," he murmured. "I love you too," she replied, pressing a kiss over his heart. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself," Warren said. "I just opened the door. You were the one brave enough to walk through it." Their first year of marriage was hard work but filled with joy. Mallory learned the ranch business, becoming Warren's true partner in every sense. She was good with the animals, had a head for numbers, and was not afraid to get her hands dirty. Warren's ranch hands returned in spring and were surprised to find the boss married, but they quickly came to respect Mallory's competence and kindness. She maintained contact with her mother and siblings, sending money when she could and visiting occasionally. Her father died that first winter, drunk and alone, and Mallory felt only a distant sadness for the man he could have been. Her mother came to live with them eventually, taking a small cabin on the property, regaining some of her old spirit with regular meals and freedom from fear. By their second anniversary, Mallory was pregnant. Warren was overjoyed and terrified in equal measure, hovering over her protectively until she had to laugh and push him away, insisting she was not made of glass. Their son was born in February 1881, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. They named him Samuel, after Warren's grandfather. Warren was a devoted father, getting up for late-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, singing lullabies in his deep voice that made both mother and baby drowsy. Watching him with their son, Mallory fell in love with him all over again. The ranch prospered under their joint management. They expanded the herd, built a bigger barn, hired more help. Mallory started a kitchen garden that became the envy of the county, selling produce in town and building friendships with other ranch wives. Warren served on the town council, advocating for better schools and fair treatment for all residents. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Rose in 1883 and another son, James, in 1886. Their house rang with laughter and the chaos of family life. Warren built additions to accommodate their growing family, and Mallory filled the rooms with warmth and love. On winter evenings, when the children were asleep and they sat by the fire together, Mallory would sometimes think back to that terrible night when she had been bartered like livestock in the snow. How differently her life could have turned out if not for Warren's intervention. But more than that, she thought about the choice he had given her, the freedom to decide her own fate. "What are you thinking about?" Warren asked one such evening, his arm around her shoulders. "About how lucky I am," she said. "How different everything could have been." Warren kissed her temple. "I'm the lucky one. You could have walked away that first night, taken the money, and started over somewhere else. But you chose to stay, chose to give me a chance. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. I chose you because I wanted to, Mallory said, echoing the words that had changed both their lives. And I'd choose you again every single day. The years continued to roll by, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Samuel grew tall and strong, with his father's quiet competence and his mother's compassionate heart. He took to ranching like he was born to it, riding before he could barely walk, showing a natural affinity for the animals. Rose was spirited and clever, keeping her brothers in line and her parents on their toes. She loved books as much as her father and had a talent for painting, capturing the wild beauty of Wyoming on canvas. James was the adventurer, always getting into mischief, exploring every corner of the ranch and beyond, returning home muddy and grinning. Warren and Mallory raised them with love and firm guidance, teaching them the value of hard work, the importance of treating others with respect, and the courage to stand up for what was right. They told their children the story of how they met, age-appropriate versions when they were young, the full truth as they grew older. "Papa saved Mama," Samuel said once when he was about 8. "Actually," Warren corrected gently, "Mama saved herself. I just gave her the opportunity. She was the one brave enough to take it." The children grew up knowing that their mother had overcome tremendous hardship, that their father had chosen honor over easy profit, that love was about choice and respect and partnership. These lessons shaped them into good, strong people. Marcus Thorne never bothered them again. He served time in territorial prison for his crimes and reportedly left Wyoming after his release, drifting to California, where he eventually died in a saloon brawl. Mallory felt no satisfaction at the news, only relief that he could not hurt anyone else. The ranch continued to prosper. Warren's reputation for fair dealing and quality livestock spread throughout Wyoming and beyond. They hosted barn dances and holiday gatherings, becoming pillars of the South Pass City community. Mallory started a women's group that advocated for the rights of wives and daughters, helping several women escape bad situations similar to her own. Warren supported her fully, providing resources and safe harbor when needed. On their 10th anniversary, Warren took Mallory back to South Pass City for a proper celebration, leaving the children with her mother and the trusted ranch hands. They stayed in the nicest hotel, had dinner in the fanciest restaurant, and danced until late in the evening. "You ever regret it?" Warren asked as they swayed together to soft music. "Marrying a simple cowboy, living this hard life." Mallory looked up at him, at the man who had given her freedom and love, who had fathered her children and built a life with her. His dark hair was starting to show threads of silver, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun and smiling at her. He was the most handsome man she had ever seen. "Not for a single second," she said firmly. "This life with you is everything I could have dreamed of and more. You're not a simple anything, Warren Calloway. You're extraordinary." He blushed, actually blushed, and pulled her closer. "I love you, Mallory, more every day. You're my whole world." "And you're mine," she whispered, resting her head on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. The children grew and eventually started families of their own. Samuel married a schoolteacher named Elizabeth, and they took over day-to-day operations of the ranch while Warren and Mallory took advisory roles. Rose married a lawyer and moved to Cheyenne but visited often with her growing brood. James became a deputy sheriff, following in the footsteps of Tom Bradley, who had retired. Warren and Mallory became grandparents, reveling in the joy of watching their grandchildren play in the same fields where their own children had grown. They told stories of the old days, passed down family history, and continued to be examples of what real, lasting love looked like. As they aged, they remained devoted partners. Warren's hair went fully silver, and his back sometimes ached from years of ranch work, but his love for Mallory never dimmed. Mallory's hands became weathered and spotted with age, but they still fit perfectly in Warren's. On their 30th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren at a party that seemed to include half the county, Warren stood to make a toast. His voice was a bit rougher than it had been 30 years ago, but still strong. 30 years ago, on the worst night of winter, I met the woman who would change my life, he began. I thought I was saving her, but really, she saved me. Mallory taught me what it means to be brave, to choose love even when you've been given every reason not to trust it. She's been my partner, my best friend, my greatest adventure. Mallory Calloway, I love you today as much as I did when I first saw you standing in that cabin, scared but unbroken. Here's to 30 more years. Mallory stood and kissed him to enthusiastic applause and a few good-natured hoots from the grandchildren. Here's to 30 more, she agreed. They did not quite make 30 more, though they came close. Warren passed peacefully in his sleep at age 83, Mallory holding his hand. He had lived a full, good life, surrounded by family and love until the very end. At his funeral, the church overflowed with people whose lives he had touched, men and women and children who had been helped by his quiet generosity and steady integrity. Mallory mourned him deeply but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together. She lived another 5 years, spending her days tending her garden, spoiling her great-grandchildren, and writing down the family stories so they would never be forgotten. On a snowy December evening, much like the one when she had first met Warren, Mallory sat by the fire in the house they had shared for so many years. Samuel and his family were there, and Rose had come to visit. They were telling stories, laughing about memories when Mallory felt a deep tiredness settle over her. "Mama, are you all right?" Rose asked, concerned. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Mallory said, smiling at her beautiful daughter. "Just tired. I think I'll rest a bit." They helped her to her room, tucked her into the bed she had shared with Warren. As Mallory closed her eyes, she could have sworn she felt his hand in hers, warm and strong. She could hear his voice, deep and loving, saying, "I've been waiting for you. Come on home, my love." And with a smile on her face, Mallory chose one last time to go where Warren was, and the world faded into warmth and light and the promise of forever. The story of Warren and Mallory Calloway became legend in South Pass City and beyond. People spoke of the cowboy who had paid double and given a woman her freedom, of the woman brave enough to choose love over fear, of a partnership built on respect and trust that had lasted through decades. Their descendants carried forward their values, building on the foundation of love and integrity their grandparents had established. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to what two people could build when they worked together with love and determination. The original house was preserved, and visitors could still see the room where Mallory had first stayed, the kitchen where they had cooked together, the porch where Warren had proposed. But more than the physical legacy, Warren and Mallory left behind something infinitely more valuable: the understanding that love, real love, was about choice. Not obligation or transaction or ownership, but the daily decision to choose each other, to honor and respect and cherish. They had proven that even in the hardest circumstances, even in a time and place that often treated women as property, it was possible to build something beautiful and lasting. Their story was told and retold, embellished and romanticized over the years, but the core truth remained. On a bitter winter night in 1878, a cowboy had offered a bartered woman her freedom, and she had chosen to stay not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And that choice had led to a love story that would endure long after both of them had gone, inspiring generations to believe that true love, the kind worth having, was always, always a choice freely made. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren grew up hearing the story, understanding that their family had been founded on principles of freedom and choice. Young women in the family were taught never to settle for less than full partnership and respect. Young men were taught that real strength lay in lifting others up, not in domination. Samuel's son, another Warren, eventually wrote a book about his grandparents, carefully researched and lovingly told. It became a regional bestseller, and people from all over came to visit the ranch, to walk the land where this remarkable couple had built their life together. On the site where the original cabin had stood, the one where Mallory had been bartered, the family erected a small memorial. It reads simply, "Here, in December 1878, Mallory Grayson was given a choice. This monument stands in honor of her courage and of Warren Calloway's honor, and in memory of all those denied the freedom to choose their own destinies." Every year on the anniversary of that fateful night, the family gathered at the ranch for a reunion. They would tell the old stories, update each other on their lives, and raise a toast to Warren and Mallory. The youngest children would run wild through the fields as their ancestors had done, while the oldest generation would sit on the porch, watching with satisfaction, knowing that the legacy was secure. Rose's granddaughter, an artist like her grandmother, painted a portrait from the old photographs. Warren and Mallory in their middle years, standing together in front of the ranch house. Warren's arm was around Mallory's waist, and she leaned into him comfortably. Both were smiling, their love evident in every line of their faces, in the way they leaned toward each other. The painting hung in the main house, a reminder of where they had all come from. The ranch itself evolved with the times but maintained its essential character. Where Warren had once run cattle, his descendants diversified, adding sustainable practices and educational programs. The ranch became known not just for quality livestock but for ethical treatment of animals and land stewardship. It was what Warren would have wanted, a legacy that honored both tradition and progress. In the town of South Pass City, which had weathered boom and bust over the decades, the Calloway family remained a constant presence. They contributed to the community as Warren and Mallory had done, serving on councils, supporting schools and churches, helping neighbors in need. The family name became synonymous with integrity and compassion. Historians and academics sometimes visited, interested in the story of Mallory Calloway as an example of women's experiences in the American West. Her story, unusual for being documented so thoroughly thanks to her children's memoirs and letters, provided insight into the challenges women faced and the ways some managed to overcome them. She became, in academic circles, an example of resilience and agency in an era that often denied women both. But for the family, she was simply Grandma Mallory, the strong woman who had chosen love and built an empire of family and values that extended far beyond any piece of land. Warren was Grandpa Warren, the honorable man who had proven that doing the right thing was always worth it, no matter the cost. Their graves sat side by side in the family cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch. The headstones were simple, with their names, dates, and a shared inscription. They chose each other every day until death and beyond. Fresh flowers always adorned the graves, placed there by family members or sometimes by strangers who had been moved by their story. The house where they had lived and loved, raised their children and welcomed their grandchildren, still stood strong more than a century after it had been built. It had been expanded and updated, but the bones remained the same. The bedroom where Mallory had first slept, confused and frightened and hopeful, was now a guest room where visiting family members stayed. Many reported feeling a sense of peace there, as if the good memories soaked into the walls had created a sanctuary. The kitchen where Warren had cooked that first meal for Mallory, where they had shared thousands of conversations and meals over the decades, was still the heart of the home. Modern appliances had replaced the wood stove, but the table where they had sat remained, scarred and sturdy, witness to generations of family dinners and late-night talks. Sometimes, on snowy winter evenings, family members swore they could feel Warren and Mallory's presence, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire, a sense of being loved and protected that transcended death. Whether it was truly their spirits or simply the power of their legacy, it brought comfort to those who felt it. The blue dress Mallory had worn on her wedding day was preserved, carefully stored in acid-free tissue and brought out only for special occasions. Rose's granddaughter had worn it at her own wedding, with alterations to fit her slightly larger frame. The tradition continued, and many Calloway brides chose to incorporate pieces of the original dress into their own wedding attire, carrying a thread of Mallory's story forward into their new lives. Warren's wedding suit had not survived the years quite as well, but his pocket watch was passed down through the male line, given to the eldest son in each generation on his 18th birthday. Inside the case was an inscription Warren had added after his marriage. "Time spent with her is the only time that matters. W.C." The story of how Warren and Mallory met continued to evolve in the telling. Some versions emphasized the dramatic blizzard and the confrontation with Marcus Thorne. Others focused on the quiet moments, the daily choice to love and honor each other. All versions, however, maintained the essential truth that Warren had given Mallory freedom when he could have demanded obedience, and that Mallory had chosen him not from necessity but from genuine love. Young people in the family grew up with this story as their foundation, and it shaped how they approached relationships. Calloway men were known for treating their partners as equals, for valuing consent and choice above all. Calloway women were known for their strength and independence, for refusing to accept less than they deserved. These were not stereotypes, but patterns, the natural result of growing up with Warren and Mallory's example. The ranch that had been Warren's dream and Mallory's haven continued into its second century under the care of Samuel's great-grandchildren. They faced challenges their ancestors could never have imagined, from climate change to economic shifts to changing social norms. But they faced them with the values Warren and Mallory had instilled: hard work, integrity, compassion, and the unshakable belief that doing right by others was always the correct choice. On the 150th anniversary of Warren and Mallory's first meeting, the family held a massive celebration. Calloways came from across the country, some from abroad, all connected by blood and the story of the cowboy and the woman in the snow. They filled the ranch house and spilled out into tents set up in the fields. They shared meals and memories, cried and laughed, and marveled at how one choice on one winter night had led to all of this. The eldest living Calloway, Samuel's daughter who was 96, stood to speak. Her voice was thin but clear as she told the story one more time, the way her father had told it to her, the way his mother had told it to him. When she finished, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. They left us so much more than land or money, she said. They left us a map for how to live, how to love, how to choose each other every day even when it's hard. That's the real inheritance. That's what we pass forward. And pass it forward they did, into the future, into lives and loves and challenges that Warren and Mallory could never have imagined. But the core remained. Love was a choice, freedom was precious, and doing right by others was the only legacy worth leaving. The snow fell softly on the ranch that night, just as it had 150 years before, covering the land in white silence. In the cemetery on the hill, it dusted Warren and Mallory's graves, peaceful and eternal. And in the warm house below, their descendants celebrated the love that had started it all, the cowboy who had paid double and offered freedom, and the woman who had chosen him because she wanted to, then kept choosing him every day for the rest of her life. Their story lived on, would always live on in the land they had tended, the family they had raised, the values they had embodied. They had taken a moment of darkness and desperation and transformed it into light and love that would shine for generations. They had proven that even in the hardest times, in the wildest places, love could bloom and flourish when it was rooted in respect, watered with kindness, and given the freedom to grow. And so the story ends where it began. In the snow, in the cold, in the hard country of Wyoming where two people found each other against all odds. But unlike that desperate beginning, this ending was warm with love, rich with legacy, full of the knowledge that what Warren and Calloway had built together would endure. Their love story was not just theirs anymore. It belonged to everyone they had touched, everyone who heard their tale and believed that true love, the kind worth having, was always worth fighting for, always worth choosing, every single day.